otherwise, I would like to sit here and say that this week was better for everybody. The opposite of that is true. So that sucks, but here we are, and we're going to attempt to make sense of it. Kyle, you and I can probably best be summed up by the fact that Ethereum decided it wanted to implode this week. So that's really fun. Kyle, I didn't have time to assess the damage for you. What went wrong?
Boeing is not doing too hot right now.
Okay.
Pretty bad. It's actually pretty bad. Like down 10% on the month now. And then my Ripple investment is looking pretty ugly for the month too. It has lost 17%.
Ooh.
Those are the big risks.
Thanks. I was seriously contemplating as we prepared for today's phone call whether or not I should just sell off anything that I've made money on and just reinvest all of it into one thing so that I can try desperately to make some type of charge in the last half of the month.
Good. What were you considering, I guess?
Well, I mean, I'm down 7%. So 7% in 2 weeks is a fairly tall order.
I guess
it's not impossible, but it's doable. So I would have to sell Commercial Metals, Alaska Air, Apple, and Microsoft.
You would let go of Alaska Air? I thought you liked it.
I do, but if I have to sell anything that's green, that's green. That would lock in about 40,000 net profit, which would bring my all-time performance back to close to zero, which is good. The problem is that whatever I bought is going to have to counteract Ethereum, which for the month is down almost 17%. Bitcoin, which is down almost 10%. DraftKings, which is down 16 and a third. Tesla, which all time is obviously horrific, but for the month is mercifully only down 5.8. Ericsson is down 6, and Canadian Solar is down another 15 and a quarter.
That's a little rough.
Yeah, it's. I should have just sold it all like after the first 2 or 3 months, just taken my money and ran. But
yeah, I guess. Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I guess you didn't know how it will act. None of us were really invested in the green space, so it could have been like a big advantage, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Worst all time.
Worst all time.
Mine has got to be a tie between. Well, okay, my worst investment all time is definitely Tesla still.
Really?
100, yes. Like stock is like minus 25%.
Okay.
At one point, I was down like triple digits on Litecoin, so that would be my worst all time.
Holy.
Like at one point, I had lost literally all of the money. I think almost.
Oh.
It was like rapidly approaching like plus like higher 90%. I was like, nice.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm down 32.5 on Canadian Solar, so that's by a wide margin, and that's coming from somebody who also is taking a bath on Tesla. So that should tell you how poorly that's going. I bought it because I was so optimistic about this whole Green New Deal infrastructure plan thing. Now, to be fair, we're going to talk about the infrastructure plan because I saw something this week that made me a little more optimistic, but I was perhaps a bit premature in my timing, I guess I will say.
What did you say? It was a 6-year investment that you made 5 years too early or whatever?
Yeah, that was exactly what I said. Sometimes that happens, though.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, what's your worst all time? I'm curious.
That's
Is
Ethereum.
it?
Unfortunately.
What is that, like 70%, 80%?
I'm down 97.5%.
Yep, that's where I was at with Litecoin. It was like, so there's like 0.
I wanna
Oh,
see the
no.
100, honestly.
Oh,
See the
no.
100.
And to think you were the last one to get into it, and we made a whole big thing about, is Kyle going to buy any crypto and what's he going to do, and this is what has happened because of our peer pressure.
It's so bad, dude.
Oh no.
Peer pressure, kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not giving peer pressure.
Lesson number 1: peer pressure is bad. Don't listen.
Honestly, I feel like with crypto, it's basically by the time you're like, by the time you've heard of it, like moving, it's already too late.
It's too late. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't buy. You can't buy the news. You have to buy what is it? The rumor.
Yeah, by the
News or
rumors and
whatever.
stuff. Yeah.
So take that as an example. I'm down literally basically all the money that I put into it.
Well, I think the problem is like since Kyle has invested, I don't think you could have really safely invested in crypto and made like it.
No.
Is, like it has been on the whole. Well, okay, maybe like in real life you could have, but the ones you have access to through investor, like I think they have all just been nailed over the last like 2 months, basically. None of
Yeah,
them-
I mean the news cycle has been really bad when you think about okay, the Chinese are cracking down on all of the mining and they're making their own
Arresting
coin and
people.
kicking everybody out. Like that news cycle really bad. Obviously, the Bitcoin bubble popping certainly doesn't help either. So yeah, I think you were damned if you did, and you were kind of damned if you didn't, in a sense. But
Yeah,
give
well,
it a
when you
shot.
see, when you see Austin pull in like a 35% total return off his $100 million, then like it's like you can't not do it. It's like
Yeah.
you know you're making yourself uncompetitive by not beating it.
you are. Maybe I should just put it all into like
That's what I'm saying. Like if
some
you're
type
talking
of
about
token that's like
10%,
10 cents on the dollar or something.
So I was asking you, like, what were you thinking about investing to make up this money? If you
Well, and that's the thing. Like, the problem I'm having is that I don't see anything that I really like all that much.
like in crypto or in
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
It's just it's difficult because amidst the backdrop of rising inflation that has absolutely rattled the confidence of the market as a whole, it's very difficult to find anything that is immune from the nervous response that you're going to get. It's like stocks and crypto, like rising inflation can be kryptonite for everything. And so you have this backdrop of rising uncertainty, everything, well, not everything. A large majority of things are grossly overvalued anyway because we're in the longest bull run in the history of the American Stock Exchange. It's not to say there haven't been corrections and all this other stuff, but like speaking generally, right? This is the longest bull run we've had, I think, ever. And so it's tough to find value where if the bottom falls out, you're not totally screwed, but there's also enough upside that you could make up 7% in 2 weeks. So I guess we will see.
I guess the alternative, Jordan, is you don't get 7% back in 2 weeks. You just hope we fall more than 7%.
Yeah, see, I don't think that's going to happen. As much as I would like to think the bottom has fallen out of Bitcoin, and it's not going to go any worse, I still have to contend with Tesla and Canadian Solar, and those two never cease to amaze me in terms of what they're able to accomplish. So,
Hey, Tesla was having a good start to the month, and then it just kind of died out.
yeah. Maybe I should just get rid of those, but it's hard for me. It's hard for me psychologically to lock in like
A loss, but if you don't think it's gonna
50% over those last two. Like that's miserable.
recover, it is.
Miserable. I don't know. I'm still undecided. I'll probably spend the rest of our call this evening waffling back and forth or tilting or whatever phrase it is that you like to use, attempting to figure out what on earth I'm going to do. But I have come to the point where I know I have to do something. The question is what. So, going to be interesting. On the topic of airlines, though, because I did mention that I may have to sell off my Alaska Airlines, I did see that one of our very own senators from the state of Washington, Senator Cantwell, is apparently opening an inquiry into the aviation industry as a whole because she and the Senate subcommittee on aviation do not understand how we could give them billions of dollars in COVID stimulus, and yet they still don't have enough employees. They're still canceling flights, and the flights that are not canceled are delayed more often than not.
So we're talking about like air traffic controllers and
We're talking about everybody. Pilots, flight attendants,
pilots,
people on the
flight
ground
attendants, air traffic
crew.
controllers. Does this include production too? Like
No, this is just commercial aviation flying from point A to
flying?
point
Okay,
B.
so the people who actually facilitate.
Yeah.
the
So
traffic.
I'll read you the specific airlines that are in the crosshairs here. So American, Delta, which Kyle owns, JetBlue, Southwest, Republic, and Allegiant. To be fair, Allegiant has always been kind of a shit show, so I don't really think I'm surprised to see them on here. I'll dust the dirt off my shoulders because Alaska is not on this list. But it leads me to the question we've talked all spring and summer long about
United
commercial aviation being such a good value because the ceiling is so high. Have we hit a point where we have to start to rethink that?
So the inquiry is, we gave you a lot of stimulus money. Where did it? And yet, when we came,
What have you done with all of the money we've given you, and why are these problems here when we specifically gave you all this money to make sure these problems did not happen?
Sure. Well, they're saying
Potentially.
So they're saying it sounds like some of the money was spent irresponsibly, and
Correct.
airlines are going to push back that there just wasn't enough money to solve.
They're going to say one of two things. They're going to say there's not enough money, or they're going to say that the labor market is so competitive they can't hire enough people with the right training.
Which also could be true. I mean, it is currently very well documented that there is a large labor movement right now. Or
Yes.
they refer to it as a labor shortage, but it's not really a labor shortage. It's a desirable job shortage. There's plenty of people who are willing to work. I feel like they're just not willing to work for the jobs that are being offered, whether it's because that job just pays too little right now, or what, has bad conditions, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the interesting thing with some of these like flight-related jobs too, like the training you have to get for some of these is very specific.
Yeah, well, like what if they're like, we don't have enough pilot? Like, what?
Okay, so
you can't just throw a random person in to be a pilot.
I am really glad you brought that one up because I was reading an article yesterday as I was kind of processing all of this. Apparently, we are like years and years and years in the making of like the largest potential pilot shortage in aviation history.
So we're basically doing like the declining population, right?
And-
All the
and
pilots are old. and
All
no
of the
one- no
pilots
one
are
young,
old.
and no
It
one
takes
young is
so
coming in.
long to train new ones that there are people in training and they're not ready yet. The problem, though, they're saying the biggest problem, and you correctly identified it, whether you knew it or not when you said it a minute ago, especially on regional airlines, pilots don't make shit. And so nobody can afford, you cannot afford to be a pilot and fly on multiple regional airlines in the United States because you literally cannot afford a place to live. How does that make any sense when you have been trained to fly a commercial aircraft?
Yeah, like you had people. Your job is technical and important enough, and it's important that you do it well enough.
Mhm.
It takes years of training before they let you do it.
Yep.
But evidently, that is not valuable enough to be paid a wage where you feel like you can live wherever you're trying to come. Yeah.
I do have to say though, I think this is where the airlines are going to have a problem because yes, it may be true that the labor market is difficult.
I'm surprised, I guess. I would think that pilots are paid more, just based off media. I
Well,
never
so
thought that pilots were paid a lot.
there's a
but
key
I never
difference,
thought that
though.
They paid not a lot,
like big time pilots for most airlines that you'd probably readily recognize make a decent amount of money. But like pilots for we'll use Allegiant as an example because they're in here. Like Allegiant has no national routes. Allegiant is regional only.
Yeah.
It's pilots on airlines like that, like Frontier, like some of these smaller, like subsidiaries, for lack of a better word, of these larger companies. That's where you start to run into the most problems. So I get that the training takes time, but you would think that what the airline is going to get nailed on is we gave you all of this money and you still can't afford to give people a raise, because only by giving people a raise can you field enough airlines to fly enough flights to make any money. And yet, did you buy back any of your own stock? How much do your executives get paid? Like, all of these other questions. We talked about it last week with the Chipotle burrito. Like, the Chipotle burrito and commercial airlines could not be more different. I will readily acknowledge that. But if they can figure it out, I feel like these companies are not stupid. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll say that they're not stupid. You should be able to figure this out. So, I don't know. I expect them to come back with all of the defenses we've talked about. But I'm just too cynical. I don't buy it. I think there has to be some level of mismanagement in here somewhere. $54 billion of federal relief is what they got.
I mean, I don't know how much each individual airline pulls in, but you would assume that a good chunk of money should have fixed something, but
Well, let's look, since you asked such a good question. We'll use Delta because Kyle owns Delta. Delta Airlines. Let's use 2019 so we don't get COVID numbers. Okay. Here we go. $47 billion.
they received $47 billion.
No, annual revenue for the operating year of 2019 was $47 billion.
Yeah, okay, but that doesn't have it. This inquiry says that the government gave these airlines money, and they're saying
Yes, but what I'm saying is that if you make that much fucking money, and we give you an additional, obviously a smaller cut of $54 billion, you shouldn't have any problems. You could give me a cut of $54 billion if you want. I'll make sure there are no problems. Like, whatever you want me to run for a cut of $54 billion, I will happily do it. Okay, let's look at profit now. So, I don't want to be unfair. Revenue and profit are not the same.
That is kind of thing, Jordan. I mean, like, you say, okay, you give me a cut of $54 billion, and I will make things run. And then what if I told you, okay, there is a tolerable level of what counts as what things run, and so you have to meet that level. Then you realize the closer I get to that level, the more money I save, the bigger my cut of that $54 billion is. That is the problem, Jordan. I mean, like, the people who were offered the deal said the exact same thing you did. You offer me $54 billion, I will get the thing to work. The problem, Jordan, is that it turns out not paying pilots, that works. I mean, we made, like you said, they made billions of dollars in revenue.
Here's my problem with that, though.
That worked.
The problem with that, first and foremost, is that you're absolutely correct. And that's a conversation for another day. But the problem that I have with that, and the problem that they're going to have if they try to dress that up as some type of legal defense if they get subpoenaed by the Senate, is that there comes a point, and we talked about it a little bit last week with the billionaire space race, right? There comes a point where you simply just don't need any more money. There's literally nothing you can do with any extra money that you have not already done. And the problem is that there are public records of those things. How many houses do you own? Public record. Did you buy back any of your own stock? Public record.
You haven't thought about the things that you could say. Like, richer people will be like, you just don't know what to spend the money on because you're too poor to understand. Like,
no.
That's what Musk is like. He's
no.
like, you regular people just don't understand. Like, I need to be in space. Like, like that's why I need to make billions off of my companies because I need to get to space. And me going to space will be great for humanity because I will be in space. Like, it's literally the mentality.
I understand that that's the mentality. My argument is that it doesn't make any sense.
I'm not denying that it doesn't make sense, but yeah, unfortunately, the person with control over the money, that's who it makes sense to, and that's the person with the billions of dollars. Like, you need to convince the person with billions of dollars that it doesn't make sense for you to hoard this money. It makes sense for you to spend it on a better world, because a better world will just be more enjoyable to live in, right? That's the idea, right? And you will reach some billionaires. There are billionaires who are like, who do spend a lot on philanthropy. I'm not gonna say that they don't exist, but the ones that don't are gonna be the most famous ones, because since they don't, they're gonna make more billions until they're trillionaires. And then once we have the world's first trillionaire,
Once we have the world's first trillionaire, we're all dead, so don't worry about it.
They will decide that they still don't have enough money. They can only buy so many countries, and that's not enough. Right?
Okay, so I have a more comprehensive set of numbers. I'm going to read these to you, and we'll see if it. Again, the problem here is that your argument is correct. It's that I just don't like it.
Like,
so I'm going to read you these numbers, and we'll see if this changes any of your perception. Okay. Full year pre-tax income. No, we don't need that. Okay. So, full year 2019 operating cash flow. This is not revenue, this is cash flow. 8.4 billion. How much of that is free cash flow? Exactly half. So they have $4.2 billion at the end of their fiscal 2019
in liquidity.
In liquid assets.
That they could theoretically just direct deposit into people's
liquid assets.
Okay.
Now,
well, I mean,
you ready for the profit number at the end of all of this?
Okay.
4.8 billion.
So pretty much
profit. So you have 4.2 billion in liquidity and 4.8 billion in profit.
Yeah. So all of your liquid cash is profit, and some other
plus.
And somehow you got something else. I don't know where it's coming from.
So when you make that much money, I'm not going to do hypothetical math because I don't know how many pilots they need and I don't know how much they make. But I have an extremely hard time believing that in all of that extra money, there is no mathematical justification to make sure that you can fully staff an entire fleet of airplanes. I don't buy it.
Probably isn't.
The problem, though, is you're right. I mean, if there is a way to keep more of it and have that be acceptable, that's what they're going to do. Yeah. I don't remember what the quote is. I think it's, you accept what you tolerate. And so by tolerating somebody's poor performance in this example, you're basically sending them a silent behavioral signal that is acceptable. And until it is not acceptable, they have no incentive to change anything.
Yeah, so that's what happened with, baseball's got their big scandal with the spider tack. It was tolerated. You can use stuff on your hand to make it stickier because, as long as you aren't using it to gain an advantage, you're just using it to control the ball better. Everyone was like, that's fine. It's less dangerous of a sport. Once pitchers figured out, if I make this sticky enough, I could add 300 rotations per minute to my breaking ball, and that makes it move an additional 4 inches.
Yeah,
that's a lot. Once they realized that, the Major League Baseball is like, wait, hold on. This is against the rules, and the pitchers are like, we've been doing this for we've been putting stuff on our hands for years. How are you all of a sudden you cut us off cold turkey? So now the 70% of people, or everyone uses something.
Yeah.
Let's just get that out of the way. Everyone uses something. So, but now, a lot of the guys are like, well, I use something that really does not give me an advantage. It just makes me comfortable. No, and you could compare the numbers. Some people have seen drastic drops in performance since the crackdown happened. Some people have, smaller drops.
Okay.
In measurables, but their performance hasn't necessarily changed. So you could tell it's something that they do use something, but it's not necessarily making them a better pitcher. Those are the people who are complaining the most, basically, right? I have for years used this thing. It's part of my routine. gets me a certain grip on the ball. It feels comfortable in my hand.
Mhm.
One guy said that because he quit using it, he had to grip harder, and it hurt. He got hurt like 2 weeks later. He said it was because they told me I could stop using my stuff. I had to. That's exactly why I got. He blamed baseball for it. He's like one of the best pitchers in the league. So I was like, it's like this scandal where like you have tolerated. Like, it's like exactly what you said. You had this rule that said you could not do something, but you tolerated it anyways, and you tolerated it, and you tolerated it, and tolerated it. And then when someone broke the line, you said, no, we can't do that. And everyone is like, you have blurred this. You have blurred this way too far. We all have different versions of the line, and now you're drawing a new one in the sand. And like now everyone in the middle of the season, so everyone's upset, of course.
I gotcha.
Wasn't a clean break. Wasn't like next year
No.
we're gonna do this. It was all of a sudden starting next week we're gonna start banning people for doing the thing that they've always been doing. So it's a very sticky mess.
I feel like didn't they have the same problem with like steroids in the early 2000s during like the whole home run race?
Too, right? Like everyone agrees that steroids are fine because like it makes the average player a little bit stronger until Mark McGwire figures out if I shoot up enough steroids, I can hit 66 home runs in a year, and everyone loves that, right? Everyone
Well, and see, this is the problem. We went through a whole. I don't remember if it was an economics class or a philosophy class that I took. We went through the whole thing of, objectively, steroids make baseball more interesting to watch because people hit the ball further.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that, obviously, is that A, it feels like cheating, and B, if everybody does it, what are the consequences of that too? And then you talk about, is there any integrity in the records and blah, 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 right? But
yeah, well, you get integrity. And even if you were saying, like, you know what, we'll just make a post-steroid record era,
Yeah.
pre-steroid era, we'll keep records separately.
Not the
Everyone
same.
can use it. The problem is, where do you start letting people shoot up steroids, right? Because, like, obviously, once it becomes allowed, everyone's going to want to do it because,
Yep.
most people are going to want to do it just because they want to remain competitive. Well, does the high school kid trying out, who's trying to make his college team, those kids are going to want to hit bombs to make the college team.
and that is where it is dangerous because they are not ready to handle it.
14-year-old do steroids because he's trying to impress his varsity coach? Because he knows to be a college superstar, you have to be a superstar in high school all 4 years. If you're not a superstar in high school all 4 years, you're never making the MLB team, right? Like, you're not excellent at that level. How are you going to be excellent at the next level?
I feel like it has to be a clean break. Like, if you are a professional, and using baseball as the example.
But that's the problem. So baseball drafts out of high school. So
No, you have to be on the active roster of a
active
professional
MLB
team.
roster?
Yes. But to even that, yes, to your point, is fraught with problems and loopholes and all this other shit. So.
Then you have no idea about a player's development really coming up through the minors because like once he reaches the majors, he could have been like a 15-homer guy in the minors, and then he gets to the majors, he starts hitting 40 home runs, and you're gonna be like, well,
Yep.
like where did that come from? How come he's gained like 60 pounds in the last year?
I got paid more. I've been eating more.
Yeah.
That's all.
But yeah, it's what you were saying. It's about tolerance, and you accept behavior that you tolerate.
I'm curious though if this also does it or does it not open the door to other federal inquiry into some of this other stuff. Because while the airline industry is the one that's in the news right now, I am confident that they're not the only ones who probably have some type of problem with this.
Well, so do you think it's going to end up doing anything? Because, I mean, if you
I would like to think so, but that sounds naive, so I'm going to say no.
If you look at how media portrays the future, there's like usually two outcomes. One, there's some sort of world government that takes over and just speaks for humanity, basically. Like, all of the governments have combined in one. It dictates, everyone lives on some sort of socialist kind of scale where you see Star Trek where everyone just agrees that we as a race live together, we don't charge each other, whatever. Like, something happened where we reached this unified form. The other future is like corporations become essentially, like, we lose countries and corporations become basically countries because they become elite enough and powerful enough where they start negotiating. Which one do you think is more likely? Like, do you think this inquiry is going to do anything? Like, which one do you think this moves towards? This is like an early teaser for that. This is it's a fairly large but minor you know, in terms of like importance in industry. Like commercial airline is important, but it's not like, you know,
It's an
extra
interesting.
oil or something like that.
It's
You
an
know?
interesting way to phrase the question.
Do you think the government right now has enough power to say, like, you know, airline companies, we gave you a lot of money and you definitely fucked it
I
up?
think they probably
And how
they
do you punish
fine some people and they probably prohibit them from buying back their own stock for a while, just like they did last time. And then they probably go back to sitting next to each other at the $500,000 dinners during re-election season, and the whole cycle repeats.
Okay.
Because I mean, the problem is that if the government finds out that something went wrong, they have to do something. Obviously, there is a moral obligation to do something.
Well, if everyone finds out that they find out that something,
But
the
you
cynical person
can't
says, go ahead.
you can't overcorrect either, because there are potential risks on that front that could destabilize A, somebody's re-election chances, B, the economy, blah blah blah. So
See, it's interesting. You put someone's re-election chances ahead of the economy.
that was a very intentional way
You
of
know, like,
ordering that.
You would think, like, you know, like, hey, even if I'm not gonna get re-elected, if this is better for the country, I would do this.
Oh, but see, power is the only commodity that makes the world go round. It's not about selfless altruism. It's not about the good of the country. It's about ideology and the exchange of soft and hard forms of power to make sure that you don't lose what you already have. So, this is part of the reason why I studied political science in college, because these two things are always related, but I won't get on my soapbox on that. We don't have time for that in a day. It's going to be interesting, though. I do hope that we're able to follow up on that whenever it ends and see what happens. On a more optimistic note, though, I teased earlier that we were going to talk about the potential for infrastructure spending and whether or not it would rescue my investment in Canadian solar. And I am too jaded to think that this is going to save me entirely. But I do think there's a chance that it starts to bounce. I don't know if you saw the $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan from congressional Democrats about remaking America's infrastructure.
Is that going to get passed in any way whatsoever?
Well, the thing is, they can unilaterally do it. They don't have to have votes from anybody else.
Are they going to?
It sounds like they might.
Democrats have this weird thing where they, like...
They don't wield the power that they have, and this is such an interesting dichotomy. Republicans wield power that they don't have, and Democrats don't wield the power that they do.
Well, it's the awkward situation where the Democrats want to be, I guess, the good person, right? And they want to say, you know, we work together in a we believe in a two-party government, or not, you know, like a, you know, like
they're trying to stay true to the original intent of the Constitution.
Solution, you know, like, you know, we don't want to, you know, like, we don't want to step on toes, and, like, honestly, like, at a certain point,
you have to.
The person that you're trying to accommodate is just wrong. They're just wrong.
I hate to use this analogy because the real life scenario is far more serious than people in Washington who can't get along with each other. But it almost is kind of like the dynamic you would see in an abusive relationship on, like, Dr. Phil or something, right? You have one person who's trying to save it, and you have the other person who's like, I don't care how wrong I am, I don't care about anything, I want this, and this is what's going to happen. It reminds me of that in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
But anyway,
This isn't to say that the Democratic Party is, like, innocent or, you know...
Which they are not. And this is why I tried to avoid getting too overly political in our conversations, because no one's hands are clean.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me that, like, you know, they push a certain type of ideology. Right?
They do.
You know, like, they do. You know, like, you know, if you ask them if you had an ideal government, like, they do have some sort of ideology they want to push.
They do.
It's interesting to me that they have the chance to 100% just enact it, and they don't. Like, like, it doesn't matter to me whether or not I agree with their policy. Just the fact that they could do it,
They could,
and
and they don't.
they repeatedly don't, just would seem frustrating to me. Like, like why? What's the point? Like,
Great question. Nobody knows the answer. I would hazard a guess it has to do with their perceived fear of long-term consequence. But
yeah, well,
again, that's a topic for another day. My most concerning long-term consequence is that we're all dead in 20 years because the only planet we can live on is uninhabitable. But that's just me. But $3.5 trillion. Included in that is an allotment to pay utilities to quickly transition all of their power supply over to cleaner fuels, financial penalties for those that move slowly. You also have fines and taxes for the emission of non-clean forms of energy. You also have potential aggressive subsidies for solar and wind development. So, aggressive subsidies for solar and wind. How long, and I realize I'm springing this on you right now, so I don't expect you to have like a mathematically sound answer. But if there are aggressive subsidies for solar and wind, similar to what we initially saw with like electric cars back when Tesla was first getting into the market, back when the first electric Prius was a thing, if we see subsidies similar to that level, how long do we think it is before at least one of these manufacturers of solar or wind components is objectively extremely mainstream and very well established? Like, is this the type of thing where you make the announcement and all of the stocks jump like 6.5% and that becomes the new floor? And everything beyond that is just extra?
What is your definition of mainstream and well established? Like, okay, let's use Tesla as the example. At what point did Tesla become mainstream and well established?
I mean, their market cap is larger than any other automobile company on planet Earth.
Yeah, well, okay, but like, how many cars do they actually have on planet Earth? Not that many, right?
No, but the stock market doesn't care about that. The stock market only cares about your market cap.
Like, so that's what I'm asking you. Like, so is it just you're not really asking us when do we think one of these companies will be popular enough that people I know will be talking. They'll be talking about it. Like, I know people who talk about Teslas. Like,
Yeah.
excited about Tesla's new models, but the number of people who buy Teslas is fairly low, right? Or at least the number of people that I personally.
Okay, I'll put it to you this way. At what point will it become more popular to actually purchase shares in one of these companies instead of a Shell, an Exxon, a BP? Like, at what point do the actual order flows on the stock exchange tip the scale permanently from these companies to solar and wind?
Probably a ways, because I think at that point, like, I think when Tesla reached the explosion, it was because people, like, normal people, even though they weren't buying Teslas, they were talking about Teslas. That's the important thing, right? Like, you have to be big.
But this is infrastructure. You're not going to ever talk about who makes your solar wind turbines or your panels or your wind turbines or whatever.
Then I think it's going to take a long time then.
Okay.
Like, you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get that then, because there's no hype behind it, essentially. Tesla exploded because it had hype behind it, because the average person could talk about
Yes.
a car going from 0 to 60 in a couple seconds, and that's exciting or whatever, and it looked cool, and like, I can't buy a Tesla, but I can definitely talk about how I think a Tesla looks cool.
So what you're saying is it would take something.
Car, go to Tesla's website and look at it and be like, what would it cost to buy this, and build a car out and be like, yeah, that's way more than I want to pay, but it's cool to, like, it's cool to select the auto driving feature and pick the Model S and like do whatever.
So you're effectively saying it would have to be something of the magnitude of one of these companies buys out their fossil fuel equivalent.
I would think that they have to release technology that is so cool that it appeals to someone on the consumer level.
Okay.
Like, I know that this company is, oh, I'm benefiting from infrastructure.
Yeah.
Getting subsidies for infrastructure.
Well, and the
You
definition of
spend that-
infrastructure in this plan is extremely broad.
Yeah, well, okay, but like the idea is that we spend this to help the government maintain its utilities. That may be true, but I think until that they release a product where they're like, this solar panel, it's super easy to install on the roof of your house. It instantly generates X% of like the daily house. Like one panel does like a massive percentage of the daily or an average house's daily power consumption. Like like it has to be kind of exciting to the consumer for them to be like, yeah, let's fucking switch to this, right? Because like okay, even if you build your shit and sell it to the government has to convince all these people to install it on their house, right?
Well,
like,
and so
like it's not like people you can't just make a power factory use electricity all of this like solar power all the time. Like like part of it needs to be distributed, I think, around to like different areas. Like yeah, I mean you could. But like that's a massive solar farm if it's gonna supply power to the whole area around it, right? Like if you don't have more individual pockets, so I feel like you would benefit the most from having a consumer product, even if that is not a big seller. Like Tesla's not a huge seller. Tesla cars are not like they do not sell that many, but they make a ton of money on their on their stock. Whatever, like. I think the solar company had to do the same thing. We have a panel that people love, so people talk about us and people talk.
I don't know if anybody's ever really going to get that excited about a solar panel though. Think about it this way, right? My utility bill is on auto pay every 2 months. I get an email that says your utility bill is X dollars. We're going to pull it from this account on this day. Thank you for being a customer or whatever. I do not read my utility bill right now because there is nothing of interest on there to me.
Well, the appeal would be the person telling you install this panel in 30 minutes and you no longer pay a utility bill because you generate electricity.
Or
like, only rich people can afford it. But everyone knows what the name of this company is. Who do you think the government is going to go to when they need their shit done? Like they're like.
But also think about it this way. Think about the people who don't own a house. If you're a renter, you're not going to put a solar panel on your balcony. If you're a renter, though,
you're a landlord,
and your local utility company is able to drive down your utility bill because they migrate quickly to some form of green energy that is federally subsidized, and then all of your renters are saving money and enjoy living in your building as a tenant, because you are sourcing everything that you can in a way that's the most cost effective.
You don't even read your electricity bill. You wouldn't even know that you're spending less money. You would not know.
I know how much it costs. I don't read anything else. If I opened an electric bill and saw that I saved $200, I would pay attention.
You would call them. You would ask them, was there a mistake? And if they just told you, no, this is your new rate, would you ask any questions beyond that?
Probably, I would say, how on earth did this happen? Like,
you would actually ask. Maybe
utilities aren't magic. You would be afraid that they're going to come back for that difference at some point.
I feel like you're. I mean, I guess, but like, would you really care? Like, okay, they've like reinstalled solar panels. Does this conversation go anywhere with you?
I mean, like, I honestly care about some of that kind of stuff, but I recognize that I am in a minority when I say that.
Like, I feel like, while people will be happy that their utilities dropped, went down, they won't, like you said, like, utilities are important. But if you told them they could get rid of them entirely, even if you told them it costs way too much money for you to realistically afford it, they're just like, oh, I won't do that then. Like, people will know about this company that does.
But see, I feel like the argument that you and I are having right now, though, perfectly underscores the likely outcome of this whole scenario. Utilities never have been sexy investments. Most people only buy them to diversify their portfolio and round out any unnecessary amounts of risk. And as exciting as it is for somebody like me to get really into the details on all this shit, to Kyle's point, most people don't care. So at the end of the day, are utilities just inevitably never going to be a sexy investment? Like, there's just nothing about them that is exciting to enough people. Like, they'll buy them because they have to, or they'll buy them because they're lumped into an ETF or a mutual fund. But they're never. You're telling me that they're never going to seek them out unless they reach this superstar high tech cult of personality level akin to what you see at Tesla.
I think
Yeah,
it's too hard.
because I think to make money like that, you have to dominate your space, right? And in a
But
space
industry energy cannot be dominated. Is the
that's
thing.
that's what I'm saying. Like you because of its public nature.
Unless you're in
right?
Texas. The caveat
Yeah.
is unless you're in Texas, then you can
Because of
dominate it.
its-
But
because of its
your grid is shitty.
public nature, like it's like the government can choose to not let a company dominate because of the public
Yes.
nature of most of its work. Which is why I'm saying, for a company to ever reach a level of it would have to dominate a completely new space, which I believe would be the individual consumer level.
Okay.
Like, you know, like Philips sells their smart lights and their like energy saver lights and all that shit. And yeah, I'm sure that makes them money. Like, you know, like you would, and really, I don't really know of many smart lights besides Philips, and I don't know of any good RGB lights besides the Philips Hue.
Quick plug for
$2,000.
the folks up at Wise in Kirkland. If you're into that stuff, go look them up.
All right, so there are alternatives, but like that's what I'm saying. Like, I think once you like that stuff is expensive.
It is.
And I wouldn't buy it, but it has name brand recognition.
Correct.
And you know, and like, if I were to talk about a light company on Twitter, it would have to be them, right? Like, I would probably say like, oh, I like my new Philips Hue lamp or whatever. Like, I sync it with my RGB computer when I play games. Like, that would probably be, you know, like those are the kind of things that you see posted about them.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of people who would be talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to like the subset of people who are editors at CNET or something. Like that's it.
Because like like you said, the big investors know how public utility industries work. Like they.
Well, and I think that's the difference. Retail investors are going to be interested in this from a very, very different perspective than an institutional investor.
The institutional investor recognizes I'm investing in a company that makes most of its money through government contracts. You know, big government contracts that are bidded on by a bunch of different companies.
Or it pays a dividend or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, they understand, so they're going to invest based on that knowledge. If you told me invest in a utilities company, I'm going to pick the one that I recognize.
Yeah.
You know? Like, maybe
you're not wrong.
Maybe it's the one that's at the top of the bill I pay. You know, like maybe it's that just has a commercial that ran most recently. I have no idea. But if you're the only one that people talk about, then you're going to be the only one I have to pay. So, like,
okay,
that to me is like, you know, that is the only, you know, investor space that has fluidness of where it, like, you know, they will pick kind of randomly where they're going to invest their money. Everyone else, the retail investors know where they're going to invest their money in utility. And if they see all of the retail investors jumping on one company, they might be like, well, this is going to just balloon up. Like, this is my chance to make a lot of money. Whether or not I believe in the company is irrelevant because their yokels believe in the company and they're throwing money at it. So, you know, whatever.
True.
It just seems like to me there isn't enough room to maneuver in the utility space.
Yeah.
So yes, like it's too boring of an investment maybe, but
okay. So it's not sexy enough. Kyle, what do you think?
I don't know. I think it's in terms of utilities, I don't see any. Well, okay, the only way, like, and then this is not really utilities. This is more like, okay, like say for example, like some people actually do make money out there if they pay for their solar system.
Yep.
To get, like installed, they can make money out of it. They can sell back to the power companies, right? If some company, so like that's not on the utility company. I mean, maybe, I guess. They're like, hey, we're offering a higher rate. Like, okay, yeah, maybe we're giving the highest rate for a company, or, you know, if you produce, like, solar energy, if you sell it back to us, we'll pay for it at a higher rate. Like, maybe that's convincing, but then that's also, like, you know, there's not one power company it's not like Comcast, where it's be like, yeah, we're everywhere. Like, like for us, it's like PSC or something.
yeah, like yeah, like how do I invest in Puget Sound Energy? Like, Where like where does that go? Like I
It's a
don't.
regional thing. It's
Yeah.
too
Well,
hard.
the utility you invest in would have to be publicly traded as
Yeah,
a
it would be-
pre-existing
you
condition.
wouldn't invest in PSE, right? You would be investing in the company that sold something to PSE, which is
Yeah.
like which is
Yeah.
like as an institutional investor, you recognize that I'm investing in a company that sells something to a public utilities company and gets used by everywhere. But as a retail investor, I'm like, yeah, I don't know who sells stuff to PSE, so I'm just gonna pick like a random thing, like like whatever. Like this company makes panels. Maybe it's used by the company that I pay my electricity bill to. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Mhm.
But if I know that 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 panel, I see that on my neighbor's house, that logo or whatever. I know people buy their stuff. He talks about how great the panel is all the time. He says it's super efficient. It makes him money or something on his utilities.
So really what you need to be doing is just starting an influencer program with like middle-aged suburban dads who have New Balances and knee-high tube socks. Is that?
I really think some people. I really think some stock people saw what happened with meme investments and realized it really doesn't matter what the company does if I can get people interested in it. It really does not matter what the company does if people are interested.
Well, I'm glad you brought up meme stocks because that actually brings us to our last topic of conversation for tonight. There's a lot of ongoing conversation about whether or not the meme stock is dead because GameStop and AMC have both fallen to half of their peak value that they recognized in June. But I found a compilation on Yahoo Finance of the tickers and companies that are appearing the most right now. And so I'm going to read you this list. I want you to give me one buy and one to buy and one to avoid like the plague. All right? So we've got SoFi. We've got Newegg. We've got DD Global, which is the Chinese version of like Uber, essentially. You've got Marin Software, which is kind of boring and not really fun to explain. You've got Carver Bancorp, which is obviously Bancorp. And then you've got Virgin Galactic and Alibaba. So some of these are on here because they have returned ludicrous amounts of money in the past like 12 months. So like SoFi is up 22% in the last year. Newegg is up 547%. DD Global, theirs isn't listed, so I can't give you that information. Marin is up like 65%. Though one day this year it surged 55% in a single day. And then obviously Alibaba and Virgin Galactic speak for themselves. So some of them are on here because they have posted ridiculous numbers. Some of them are on here because people think they're about to be shorted by a hedge fund and they want to pull the GameStop trick again. So we've got online commerce, we've got online finance, we've got a bank, we've got some tech stuff. What do we think as our time starts to dwindle here? One to buy and one to avoid.
I think I stay away from Chinese Uber.
Okay.
Uber to me, just regular Uber to me, not a great investment. So I'm not really sure what Chinese Uber is offered. I mean, like I used to big numbers early. That doesn't theoretically surprise me since I'm like,
No. I mean, it's
valued initially very low, and then like the idea of transporting people in China is worth something. It's just,
for sure.
It's just like the long-term use of Uber is just kind of like I don't know like if that plan can even survive, like with the amount of like
there's a lot of question marks with the business model.
Yeah, like,
very
they get
true.
Sued and like they're like people are like, do we need to regulate what a contract like what a like like if your company single-handedly causes new laws to get written about it all the time, I don't know if I want to invest in it right now.
That's a very fair point. So on the flip side, which one of these are you taking?
it's kind of ironic because I don't really use Newegg anymore as a consumer, but it does not surprise me that it's gone up 500% with people just buying computer parts out the wazoo.
Yeah.
You know what? It appears in a lot of YouTube videos. If I search PC parts, I'm sure it's like one of the first like links that comes up. Yeah, it's the third link. It's the second link if I search up PC parts.
Okay.
PC part
Yeah.
link, which links to Newegg most of the
Yeah.
time. So, you know, I don't really use Newegg a ton anymore because they've kind of gotten, their customer service is not as good as it used to be, and the pricing has been you're called in question a little bit by people who track that kind of thing. So I'm not, a huge fan, but if I were to invest in one of those companies, people are not going to stop buying computer parts. It seems like
Very
having
true.
a computer has become a much more mainstream thing. I don't know why suddenly. It kind of makes sense to me that the computer itself is becoming more important to society, I guess. But I don't know, why last year all of a sudden that was
I mean, it's all mining and gaming stuff, is what it is. But
I guess.
I mean, I think it's also working from home too, though.
Yep.
Yeah,
very true.
The having a computer just became way more important in the last year. Building one. And yeah, professionals do need, we talk about video cards in the terms of gaming and maybe GPU mining, but you need a good graphics card to render things too. If you're an artist or a designer or something. So, or if your job is to crunch big numbers, the reason why graphics cards are good at mining is because they do math fast. So if I perform physics calculations or large computations, you need a nice computer for that too. So.
All right, Kyle, which one are you buying and which one are you avoiding?
Oh boy. I don't know a lot of the companies. I know Newegg.
Okay, so you're gonna buy Newegg because you at least know what it is.
I'm at least familiar with it. Yeah,
Okay.
I am the same with Kyle. I used to love Newegg because it used to be a good website. Prices were good, customer service was good, return and stuff was good. And then their RMA stuff became terrible. Their customer service terrible. Their website is so bad. Their website literally is I don't even know. I don't know what to. It's like eBay almost. You can have a bunch of random, non-Newegg sellers.
Okay.
And it's just dude, I only want Newegg.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're taking Newegg and you're avoiding the rest of them.
Yeah, because I can see how Newegg became terrible. And then, I see where.
I can see how they became terrible. Therefore, I would buy it if I had no other choice.
The terribleness stems from the fact that they make a lot of money, right? They don't need to they don't focus as much on customer service because they get a lot of more tickets because a lot of people are buying them. Yeah. They decided to have shadier prices because they realize they don't need to offer the best deal because that's not why people are coming to them anymore. People are coming to them because they're the most familiar, they're the safest choice now. Because the safest choice, we can charge a premium for being the safest choice, right? The parents and grandparents, when they're looking to buy something for their kid or grandkid, they come to Newegg. So they're not looking to save 10% because this is their entire budget. This is their computer that they saved up for months to get. That used to be who goes to Newegg. Now it's I'm just looking to buy a computer part. I don't care if it's 5% above market. I'll pay it. Yeah. It happens.
So both Kyles are buying Newegg. Kyle is avoiding DD Chinese Uber because he doesn't believe in Uber's business model, which I think is absolutely fair. Other Kyle is avoiding all of them because he does not know what they do. I personally would be buying SoFi if it were up to me. I think they've got a really nice diversified stream of financial products that are particularly relatable for young people or people with debt, which nowadays seems like it's the majority, for the reasons we discussed as to why airline pilots make no money and why nobody wants to work fast food jobs. But you can watch last week's and the week before if you want to hear more of those comments. The one I would avoid, again, last week we talked about Virgin Galactic. I would definitely not be buying that. As much as I think Richard Branson is some type of business genius, would not touch that. I also would not touch DD. Because the Chinese government doesn't like dual-listed companies anymore. So If
You don't
if
think
you're
so?
listed in China and you're listed in the U.S., they've been cracking down on those, and that's quite problematic.
Okay.
I also
Not
just
more.
don't know about the Uber business model either, though. I'm admittedly not convinced.
So you're
I
not
think
convinced by
that
Virgin Galactic either. You don't think that they're gonna, even initially, just based on hype.
I
There
think
will be
based on
hype.
hype, it goes up a little bit. But if you were to buy it, I'll put it this way: if you were to buy it, the second it goes up is the second you get rid of it, and you take whatever money you've made and you run as fast as you can to something else.
Okay.
Because I mean, best case scenario,
Do you take it?
you're
You
probably
take it?
6 months away from any type of commercial operation, which means you're at least a year away, if not more, from profitability. Let's face it, a year is probably, depending on frequency. I know they have pre-orders, so we'll just leave it at that. You're probably a year away from profitability, maybe more. Like I would not want a part of that with my own personal money. That is not to say it is not for everybody. No, but that's me.
If you made money off it, would you invest it in something else after selling, or would you invest it in what you considered the best space company?
Oh, I would take it somewhere else, without question.
Take it somewhere. You wouldn't
Without
take
question.
it and be like, "This is Blue Origin." Or
Well, Blue
I guess
Origin is
SpaceX.
private, and SpaceX is still
Well,
private
let's say,
too.
let's say,
So
let's say you held Virgin Galactic for a year.
Okay.
Made you some money.
okay,
It made you some money, and then Blue Origin and SpaceX became public at that time. So you made money over a year, Virgin Galactic. They haven't really released anything new. They still plan on doing this whole like we're gonna shuttle people, rich
mm-hmm.
people, at whatever their ticket price was how many grand was it? 20.
$250,000.
Yeah, 250. Yeah, sorry, not 25, but yeah, like so maybe like do you test the waters for one of the other companies if they look better? Or you just say I'm getting out of space. I made money. I'm getting out of space.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be in it to begin with, but if I had no choice, I would take that money and I would run as far away as I could. It's not that I don't think there's potential there. I do. I just think that we're still a long ways away from it being a practical thing to invest in. Part of that is obviously contingent on if Blue Origin and SpaceX go public, what is that list price? Like Virgin Galactic went public at $10. Had I bought Virgin Galactic at $10, I'm probably pretty happy right now. Would I buy it now at $40 or whatever it's at right now? Hell no. So I think it's a twofold question. It's what do you believe the window of opportunity is between when you get it and when you can make any money off of it, and what can you buy it at? Because at the right price, anything can be a good value. I just don't think it's $40.
Okay, that's fair.
But yeah, I mean the whole Uber business model thing, I think you and I are on the same page there. I have so many concerns about the way that they make money, and obviously I am not familiar with the intricacies of the Chinese version of this. I don't know how they're similar. I don't know how they're different. But if the business model is even remotely similar, I want no part of it. And the whole uncertainty with the government does not make me feel any better.
What was weird to me though is even though I don't like Uber, if it fails, it happens because like I'm not gonna lie, the service it provides very necessary, right? Like people need.
A very interesting question.
Does taxi come back? Do taxi companies start making apps? I mean, like you can already order a taxi on the phone theoretically.
Yes, but it's a very
inconsistent.
inconsistent customer experience. So
Yes.
I think what would happen, you have a couple of things that would probably happen. I think, A, assuming that Lyft is still around, Lyft immediately fills that market niche, and then another competitor comes along because they know that there's still enough of an opportunity that they are trying to make some money. Or, if the taxi companies were smart, and I'm not saying that they are, and I'm not saying that they're not, they would do the best that they could to replicate the booking experience and the actual experience of riding in one of their taxis through a simple, uniform mobile app interface. And that would effectively become their new product offering.
Yeah, because like
Why they haven't attempted it already, I don't know. If some of them have, I apologize. I sure as hell have not heard about it, which probably tells you how well it's going. But,
I mean, honestly,
yeah.
like the driver is not like what I pay for. It's not like I think I get a better driver.
No, it's not about the
Like-
driver at all. It's about, is
Like,
it
so
convenient?
it's not-
Is the pricing good? And is it clean and comfortable?
It's just mostly the ease of being
Yeah.
able to call a car to my and like the thing about Uber is because it's regular people, you don't need a driver to be like right, like a regular person could be the driver, thus there's driver. Like the problem with taxis is like there's no that company isn't set up in the small regional town that you're in.
Yeah.
Then you don't have a taxi.
Correct.
It's easy for Uber to get to a town because they just need one person in that town to decide that they're willing to drive people around for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yep. Definitely an accessibility question.
Yeah, so I guess, but yeah, I have questions about how a company could survive as Uber, but it's weird to me because I feel like Uber service is definitely something that will stay around.
Well, I think it's interesting now that they have to start dealing with some of the legislative complications that they've brought down on themselves. Like, ride prices universally are going up. And so, I'm curious, as Uber becomes less of a good deal, how does that also contribute, or does it matter at all, to this kind of shift in the landscape of last mile and personal transportation? Because like before, when Uber was just raising more VC money than it knew what to do with, it didn't really matter what the ride cost the customer because all they cared about was that people were using Uber. Now they have to make money. And so when it ceases to become as good of a deal, is that an Uber problem? Is that a transit in general problem? Like, do people even care? Is the other question we would have to ask.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like we could do a whole show on Uber because there's just so much to unpack. But
Okay.
I think that's enough for today. You've heard me rant enough about all of the things I don't like for 1 week. So now the challenge. Can I make back 7% in 2 weeks? I guess we'll find out. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I thought this call would give me an opportunity to get my head on right and figure it out, but I have just as many questions now as I did when we started. So, well, for those of you that are not doing as shitty as me, which is all of you, best of luck this week. I've got some homework to do, but hopefully when we talk next, things are looking a little better for everybody. But until then, we wait and see. Take it easy, guys.